and welcome to Because School Means More, the podcast where we explore what true inclusion looks like in schools and how we can make it a reality. Each episode will share real stories, practical strategies, and insights from schools that are leading the way in inclusive education. Whether you're an educator, a parent, or someone passionate about inclusion, this podcast is for you. Everyone is welcome here. Because School Means More is brought to you by the Inclusion Partnership. My name's Jo Wilkinson and I'm the Inclusion Partnership Manager and podcast host. I'm joined by some co-hosts and guests for each episode. Our mission is to create real change by building an inclusion movement, a network of schools and organisations committed to inclusive relationships and inclusive provision for every child. Join us as we break down barriers, share success stories and work together to build schools where everyone belongs.
Because school means more.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us again for today's episode of Because School Means More. Excited today that we are going to talk about coaching circles. So today's episode is all about connection. Introduce myself first. So I am Jo Wilkinson, the host of the Because School Means More podcast and the Inclusion Partnership Manager. Phil?
Phil Smith, I am the co-host and also chair of the Inclusion Strategy Group and also head of Aldercar High School.
Graham?
Hi, morning. I'm Graham Ferguson. I'm the virtual school head teacher for Looked After Children in Derby City and part of the Inclusion Partnership.
And
Amazing.
We are delighted to have Graham with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Played a fundamental role, particularly with this particular project that we're going to be talking about. So let's start with a check-in question. And we've got the wheel to spin, so go on, Phil, you can spin.
Oh,
What are we on? Question
number
5.
5.
Go on then, Phil, you ask the question.
Number 5. Graham, if you had a completely free day, which we know that you don't, if you had a completely free day, how would you spend it?
Doing something sporty
Okay,
out in the open, I think,
nice.
because I spend a lot of time sat at a desk.
Yeah.
And it's always good to get outside.
Any particular favourite sporty type thing?
Increasingly golf,
Oh,
interestingly enough.
great.
Yeah,
Nice
takes a
concept.
while. I've got to that stage in life where I can justify the time for
You
my
could
children.
spend that day together. You could
Gonna
both go on
say.
a golf course. What about you, Phil?
Yeah, definitely outdoors. Golf, dog walk, possibly some nice food, and I'll be rude of me not to say a pint.
Well, I definitely want to be on the golf course, so you're safe there. Might be on a cricket pitch, maybe. You
Not
never
even
know.
as a caddy.
Not even as a caddy, no. I could meet you at the number 19 afterwards for a drink. But no, I would probably love to be out in the fresh air as well, maybe enjoy a swim outdoors, but also perhaps meeting up with friends and going out for some food and drink somewhere.
Great.
Right, Graham,
One
spin
more.
that wheel.
Come on.
One more.
Let's have another go. Number 6.
Number 6.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Ooh, it would be a night owl, only because my wife keeps me up late at night watching trashy things on the telly, and I can't go to sleep if she's watching the telly.
What about you, Phil?
I think I'm a bit of both, to be fair. I do like getting up early, particularly spring and summer. You know, as soon as that sun starts shining through the curtains, it's almost time to get up and get going.
I don't think I'm either. I think I'd just probably like sleeping too much, but
Sloth-like.
yeah. on a nice morning though, with being up early, having a cup of tea in peace on my own, probably watching a bit of trashy TV on my own, but also enjoying getting out in the fresh air would be probably a nice start to the day for me. But potentially I'm probably neither. Right, shall we talk coaching circles then? So let's start first of all, Graham, if you can just explain how this work came about in the city.
Okay, so I think this work did come about as part of a journey that we're on as a city and as an inclusion partnership. So we started 3 or 4 years ago with looking at relational and restorative practice within the city, looking at changing the culture if schools wanted that within their schools, and looking at a programme of development which would help them and support them change their cultures. And I was always very clear that you can do a training course, and it's the so what question. And in terms of changing culture in a school, I was always very sure that it would take 3, 4 or more years to change that culture. And so coaching circles came about as, I guess, part of the 4th year of developments that we have done within the city. There was a lot of conversation around, well, is restorative relational practice, is it soft, and what is the impact, and why why should schools do it? What are the outcomes? Schools are judged by Ofsted on their outcomes, their attainment 8, their progress 8 at secondary, and we got into coaching circles because I read an article in a book that I'd got, and it talked about Carr Manor in Leeds. I looked at their Ofsted report. Their Ofsted report was an outstanding Ofsted report, but the first line which struck me was around, to call this school outstanding doesn't do it justice. And that obviously tweaked my imagination. I then looked at their website. I looked at their attainment results. And when you look at their attainment and progress results, they are off the chart. And we talk a lot about the attainment gap closing and the attainment gap for disadvantaged pupils closing, and Carr Manor demonstrate that and how they've done that. And then when we started conversations around why that was happening, it was all about their relational approach, their culture within school, their sense of belonging, their sense of safety for the youngsters in school. And we all know that to get good attainment and progress results in school, the youngsters have got to be there. They've got to feel as if they belong. And that was in bucket loads that we found at Carr Manor.
So a truly evidence-based piece of work that shows that the two absolutely can go hand in hand together.
And I guess the other thing as well is, as we've got to know Carr Manor, it was really refreshing to hear, if a bit daunting, that they've been on this journey for 14 years, not just the 4 that we are embarking on. And I think that just shows that the longevity and the commitment they've got to working in this way.
And I think from a personal point of view, of chairing the strategy group and being involved in the wonderful conferences and the wonderful work, I think the city's at that point now where we've talked about, we go back to those 3 phases that we've talked about in a previous podcast. There's a lot of knowing, and this was an opportunity for us to bring something into the city that would enable that doing and then that being. And I will say, from a school leader myself that has looked at the coaching circle training, I was involved in it, and I was blown away by just the power of it. And I took it and then to embed it in a school. And for me, the reason it works, and I'm going to talk about at any level, the reason it works is because that circle and the shape of the circle and the philosophy of the circle is built in that community. And I think it's quite interesting that, education is a weird beast, because there is that inherent power imbalance. Teaching predominantly is somebody authoritative at the front, facing a different way, teaching, trying to get a concept across, and that isn't psychologically safe for everybody. Whereas the fact that we remove tables, we remove, I'm going to say rank, everybody's equal, everybody contributes, is a complete different power shift and a power dynamic shift within how we educate young people and adults. So that's then led to, lots of research-based outcomes. It does lead to psychological safety. It builds trust. You've got that sense that everybody within the circle is responsible. So it's a joint responsibility, which is really, really powerful. That then leads to really strong connections. There's something also beautiful for me about everybody having the opportunity to speak, but also having the opportunity to listen. And far too often, we're not good listeners. The human condition is not necessarily to be a good listener, whereas this is encouraging that. And also, it's drawing on the insights of everybody. It's almost like a collaborative approach to things. And, from personal experience and from people who've been on the training, they're actually fun. I've seen it work with staff. We've done it for inclusion leader training events. And even as a training for adults, it opens up a level of collaboration and warmth and sharing that you would never get round tables or in a conference style or anything like that. So for me, those are the really, really clear psychological benefits of how it works. And I think what works for the children, and I will say for staff particularly as well, is that whole idea of on Monday morning we have a check-in, during the week we have a check-up, and on a Friday we have a check-out for each young person. That's really, really important, because we know, school leaders know that sometimes Monday can be quite a tough day because you're playing catch up with regards to some of the issues that have happened over the weekend that come out. And actually, for some young people, Friday's not a great day because they might not necessarily enjoy the weekend, or they're fearful of the weekend. And I think from a personal perspective for me, as a head, I've always shared a story about forgotten children. And I remember my daughter, my eldest daughter, Izzy, when she was in year 7, we went to the year 7 parents' evening, and Izzy's a conformist child. She would work hard, she'd do everything, do all of her homework, turn up on time. And I remember going to parents' evening and listening to her teachers, and it was really clear that they didn't know who she was. And in my head, and I developed it as a school leader, she became a forgotten child. And actually, one of the beautiful things about that circle work is you don't get forgotten children, because even people within that circle understand who people are, what they do, what they like, what they don't like. So for me, it's one of those things that, as quite an older person in the sector, I'm almost disappointed that I didn't know about this 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And I'll say, from a school leader that's embedded in a school as well, the Monday check-in, the Wednesday check-up and the Friday check-out were just beautiful moments for me to walk around the school and see that genuine connection. And it'll come through what we're talking about today. We're too early to put data on it. And as you said, Carl Manor 14 years. Yeah. But they did say that our journey could be a lot shorter. But what you feel and what you see is indescribable.
It's really evident.
Yeah. And I think that's true, because I think as part of the training package, Carl Manor came to Derby and they did their immersion day, and everyone thought, yeah, that's all good on paper. Let's see it in action. So we did do a couple of trips up to Carl Manor, which were amazing, and staff came back so enthused to actually see that it was working.
Believing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice to see that it's not just one phase, that it works across all phases, from reception all the way up to year 13, and that's really powerful as well, that its impact can be so broad.
Just tell us a little bit, Phil, about the makeup of a circle. So typical size of a circle, who leads those circles, just so that those that don't understand how it works just have a bit more insight.
Yeah, so circles are a lot smaller. And within schools, they are led by a whole range of adults within the organisation. So this isn't just a teacher-based approach, and that's the same at Carl Manor, and also from the schools that have adopted and tweaked the approach here in Derby. For me, when I embedded it in my last school, there were groups of about 14, and it was 14 because we tried to go across the 7-year groups of year 11 to year 13. And try and get 2 from each year group within each circle. The coaches, and we had to do a little bit of community work with regards to the word coach, because a lot of people went for you are a professionally trained coach and we're going to be doing that. Coach is not that kind of thing. It's somebody who's going to facilitate the kind of conversations and the activities within that circle. And they are a whole range of people. So yes, it's teachers, but it can also be support staff. It can be caretakers, office staff, lollipop lady, whoever it is. And that broadness is really, really powerful. And there's some great stories that we'll see on the videos, aren't there, with regards to that. And I know that through the journey that I've been on and the other schools have been on, there's been some questions about, does it work across year groups? But actually we've found that even down to reception year 1, year 2 and year 3, however it's grouped, that vertical element to it really, really works. And we'll save some of the impact, the anecdotal impact that's come through in the work that you two have done with regards to going and capturing it in schools, because that's a beautiful thing itself.
And as Graham said, that's where the visit up to Carl Manor as an immersion day was an incredible experience to really see and hear from staff and children about that approach, and you could see that it was absolutely embedded within that school and a core part of the makeup of the school. But I was lucky enough that now that we've delivered some training in Derby and we've engaged some schools locally that want to embed it in their own setting, all in slightly different ways, but been lucky enough to go and visit some of those schools and capture that on film.
Yeah.
So today we'll be sharing some of those examples from Chellaston Academy, from Shelton Junior School and from Springfield. And the beauty with that is, like you say, Phil, we've got content there that covers right from reception up to year 13 in terms of how they've gone about it and the difference that it's making.
And I think one thing that for me is really, really important, to a certain extent, I think within the sector, having funds become frowned upon.
Yeah.
You know, we're a sector where we're chasing attainment scores, we're chasing progress scores, we're trying to make sure and ensure that our young people are ready and prepared for their next steps.
And we've got to be serious for all of that.
And that element of funds kind of, I'm not going to say gone, but it's not as prevalent, I don't think, as it has been before. But actually, circle time can be fun. And what's been a really beautiful thing, and yet again, it's anecdotal stuff, is things like the community builders.
Yeah.
You know, so one of the ideas is how we have an activity, a fun activity called a community builder. It's great to see both staff and students enjoying that. But I've now had a couple of schools, both in Derby and also in other areas of the country, that have done this, that have been really keen to share that idea of, you know, at wet break, for example, or at wet lunch, that the children are going into dry spaces, creating the circle themselves and getting involved in community builders. So almost that kind of like self-policing, when for most school leaders who are out on duty on a miserable winter's day, there's kind of like a quite a lot of fear about it. Whereas I'm not saying that is the panacea to cure all of that, but it's beautiful to see our young people engaging. And particularly politically at the moment, we've got lots of talk going on about social media and the negative impact that phones and screen time is having. To get our young people to play games together and interact in that way is also a bonus that you might not necessarily find any data for at this point in time, but just kind of morally and philosophically and life skill preparation is just a win-win.
And that really came across in the films, was when we asked children and young people what they enjoy about coaching circles and what's different is they talked about the opportunity to get to know children that ordinarily they wouldn't, because they're in different year groups. And just those small moments of walking past each other in the corridor.
And the secret handshake.
The secret handshake. Or what I probably hadn't thought through was they also talked about seeing them in their community and how lovely that is, that they see children that part of their circle. And they talk very much about being a family as a coaching circle, which was really lovely. But they talked about how they see each other out and about as well, and what a lovely opportunity that is to connect as well. So let's talk then and share some of those film snippets that we got recently from the 3 schools. So let's start initially with intent and share some content around what the school's vision was around coaching circles. First of all, at the very first part of that journey when they joined us for the training.
It all really started with my head teacher going on to some training run by the Inclusion Partnership, and he experienced Tom and Carl Manor, visited Carl Manor School, and he was just blown away by the circles concept and the circles idea. Over the last decade or so, we're losing that ability to build those relationships just naturally. So we're doing this deliberately now to try and encourage children, for instance, to make eye contact, to take turns, to listen actively, to ask questions. So that's the benefit that we feel we're going to start seeing as time goes on with our circles. So for us, it linked with some children who are still quite low with resilience. Communication and language being low for children coming into school is a big thing for us too. So the things that were talked about in circles we felt could help our children. The relationships across school, I feel, are the key to this. You see children greeting each other around school that they might not have done before in different year groups, as well as staff.
I found it more exciting and kind of changed my mindset, and that it was an opportunity rather than something to be worried about.
Yeah, I feel like I was quite confused to begin with, because I was like, obviously we've gone through the whole school journey of having fun time. But I think as soon as they started telling us about like the research behind it and like the idea behind having more of a community feel, I think it made me feel more comfortable with the idea.
And then being the lead on personal development, I was really excited about it, but also was thinking, how on earth does this work in a school that's had a really traditional form or tutor-based model? How do we bring our community together? So I was really lucky to be able to go and visit Carr Manor, go up to Leeds and experience their immersion day, where I saw it in action. I saw the way that things flowed on a Monday from staff circles, and the way that that kind of philosophy of care really resounded with what we believe in it at Chellaston. And to see it in practice really helped to be able to start putting it into place.
So following on from those first few snippets of videos, what are our feelings about it with regards to the intent and the reason for schools doing it?
Well, I suppose I think watching those videos, schools had a very clear intent around how it would benefit their pupils in their schools. And I think we've always said we didn't want to lift wholly what Carr Manor did and plonk it into Derby School. But what schools have done in the city is they've identified things that they see in their pupils that they want to develop. So, for example, the language skills, and they see the circles as a way of helping develop those language skills.
And resilience. Somebody talks about resilience, don't they? And
language, meeting those development needs more. And but that word relationships came up quite regularly, didn't it? And it was interesting that Shelton Junior talked about how nowadays children and society generally are losing that ability to build relationships. And by introducing this structure, that would allow them to start to do that again and to be able to connect through those families.
Yeah. And I think, particularly listening to the sixth formers at Chellaston, it's that idea that it was a big systemic change, removing form time, putting conscious circles in. But that idea of, it's almost like the Simon Sinek why principle, isn't it? It's what's the rationale for it, and when that's in place, that is going to help with the intent. So it's not just about what is the school intent, it's then making sure school leaders let the whole school community know what that intent is, so they can go on that journey. Yeah,
and they shared really openly about how that helped them to change their mindset. And I suppose as year 13s, they'd been used to a form system, from year 7, potentially before then as well. But how they gained the understanding about the concept of this, and that's where there was transparency, I think, particularly with those sixth formers around how this could create a community feel. And in some of the snippets we'll share further on in this podcast, you'll hear about what they've gained from that and how that's helped them. And I think as well that sharing around philosophy of care was a really lovely one that Laura shared about. Ultimately, this was about bringing the community together, and that philosophy of care really aligned very closely with their values as a school.
And I think from a school leader's perspective, my experience of doing it was, I'll come back to any initiative that you're going to put in schools, it's about hearts and minds. And I still, vividly, fondly remember the first training session I did with staff. We were in circles, there was a bit of hesitation. But when we pointed out the benefits of it and actually got the circles to recognise the benefits of how that was working and the engagement, there was that hook.
Yes.
And therefore there was that shared why. And therefore something that potentially is quite scary, and it is, to do such big structural organisational change, becomes more manageable because you've got people on board.
Yeah, and because those school leaders could see the potential in that model. And I think it was shared in those videos there that, some heads had come to this training and gone back in school and said, right, this is what we're going to be doing. And it was a very quick decision for some of them from that point of view, because it did really land with them at right time, right place. So brilliant to see how it could align and help with their vision as a school leader. But I guess the next bit in terms of the snippets that we'll share was the reality then of how they went about it. So how did they implement and how did they embed coaching circles? How did they deal with the logistics around that? How did they address staff training and get children and families on board as well? Because that was definitely kind of part of this journey, wasn't it? So let's have a listen to those clips.
We then spent a lot of the summer term looking at logistics. It's rooms, it's groups, it's pupils, it's teaching staff, it's non-teaching staff, it's contracts, it's trying to make it work. But when we kept coming back to the question, is this the right thing for our students to experience? it was always a yes. Offering training experiences, experiencing the community builder games, the more we could do with staff, the more they would, again, be able to sort of almost replicate that in their own time. Every day, somebody will come up to me and say, oh, I just had the best time with my coaching circle.
And children head to their circle for a check-in on a Monday, a check-up on the Wednesday, and a check-out on the Friday. We began by providing all of our staff with about 3 weeks of planning to get everything up and running. And we'd already done a little bit of work in our staff circles on different games and community engagement sessions within them. We've now moved on to coach notes. So every teacher or site manager or admin team member or TA, whoever's running their circle, get their weekly coach notes, which helps them to plan and organise their sessions throughout the week. I think, first of all, you need a bit of strategic mapping of your building. So work out where your circles are going to go.
So the concept of circles, when it was first introduced to us, was that it was very community building and about joining different children from different year groups and then getting to know each other and being able to have points within the week that they can also check in with each other. At first, I think I was quite excited to give it a go. Was quite nervous of not knowing some of the children, but after that first session that we did and just how eager they were to participate and to check in with each other, then that kind of calmed any nerves and they've been really enjoying it.
Our coaching circles are called super circles, and the teachers in it are really nice, and they ask how your week's gone, any ups and downs. And at the start of every day, they always give us a starting question, like, would you rather be in Hogwarts or live in Narnia? This week's question was, would you rather spend a year in your favourite book, or a year with one of your favourite characters from living at your house?
These questions really cheer me up sometimes. Just tells you that someone cares about you.
Well, I like, because there's 3 rules. It's, so we have a talk piece for them, and we can only speak when we have the talk piece. And then the second rule is we only have positive things, so like you won't like get brought down, you'll only get brought up. And then our third rule is you can pass. So you don't have to answer a question if you don't feel comfortable to do.
So I must admit, I was anxious. I remember going into that first training at Pride Park and there were no tables. The chairs were in circles, and I can remember thinking, oh my goodness, what is this going to be? And I saw the exact same look on staff faces when I did it for them too. And it's just that once you understand why and how everybody's equal, and for us, the consistency of message across school.
Okay, lovely to hear from the schools there to talk about how they went about it. And it was really clear that it was a daunting process. There was clearly some learning and some top tips that they started to share with us for any schools that want to come on board with it in the future. But I think the key, would you agree, was about staff training, first of all, and having to get staff circles.
Yeah, I think that's very clear. I think all the schools that have started to do this have started with the staff and done the staff circles, built the confidence, and I think the staff themselves have seen that real sense of belonging as a staff team.
Yeah, that came across.
And therefore, and I think it came through the training as well. The way the training was set up, as Springfield said, it was daunting going into a training session with no tables, just circles of chairs. But then I think the way the training was delivered in those circles, the penny dropped.
Yeah, you have to experience it.
Absolutely. And I think having done that staff training, it's then easier, I guess, for those staff to then take that to the youngsters in school.
So the top tip was definitely about the more we can do with staff, the better.
Yeah, and I think there was a couple of clips there where it was to support staff with the change of it. It's providing the resources for them. So I know Laura's talked about it at Chellaston and also Joe at Shelton. It's about providing staff, so it's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah.
And I think from our conversation with those schools, they've almost mapped the whole year. So there's always something for staff to fall back on. And I think it's quite interesting. There was also some schools that spent a lot of time thinking about the grouping as well.
Yeah.
And making
and
sure
had to
you've
rejig a little bit in the first
yeah,
few weeks.
Yeah, and there's one of the clips where, you know, one of the students is really clear saying that I enjoyed my circle because I was with a friend, and it helped me with that kind of embryonic embedding myself into the circle and getting used to that. So There's lots of, from a school leader's perspective, you could say it's so logistically challenging, but actually it's just a list of jobs to go through, and it's really clear from these guys that they've thought about almost pretty much every single thing: where the chairs go, how many chairs they've got,
mapping exercise,
mapping the staff, mapping the students, making sure it's all right, making sure the resources are there. Again, Chadison talked about retraining and retraining and retraining.
And one school shared with us about doing a practice run, as part of a staff meeting at one point, to have a practice run and setting up all of the coaching circles and checking that logistically there's enough space, enough chairs. And they found every space they could across the school building to make it logistically possible, but they absolutely could make that work.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of schools there that have changed their staff meeting setup. So there is a staff check-in on a Monday morning before the student check-in, not only to provide that genuine check-in on staff, but also there's that opportunity for staff to make sure they're going into the student check-in well prepped, well versed, ready to go.
And even pre that, some SLT meetings running at the very start of the day in that format as well. So you can see then how that theme and way of working runs throughout kind of the school day, but also you build more confidence that way to do that. And I loved hearing the children talk about it so brilliantly on those videos. So they shared the rules really well, and really made it very clear that it was about everyone being equal. It was about being positive. So I think she used the phrase about you can only sort of help people
bring them up,
and not bring them down, but also the openness that it's okay to pass, and that it's a safe space to be able to do that. And I think some of the schools talked about how sometimes in the beginning children did pass, but more and more as their confidence grew and as they began to feel safe and secure in that space, more and more children now do talk. And didn't those children talk brilliantly about their coaching circle experience? And I just loved the little boy at the end of one of the film snippets that talked about, it just shows that people care for me here. And I thought that was just so lovely. It almost sounded a bit like we were giving them words to kind of read out, but they absolutely weren't. They were talking about it really honestly. So I think what I've loved about this piece of work, and it really came across at Calm Manor as well, was staff have absolutely bought into it and they've had to overcome some anxiety and calm their nerves around it. But children can talk equally eloquently about the concept and about how it works, and have clarity around the process, the rules, what it's for, how it helps them to build those connections across the school as well.
Yeah, and I think it's really good because I think you can see in those films, it's the knowing they've been to training, the doing, they're doing it, but you can very quickly see now it's just the way things happen around here.
Yeah, and that was so evident when I was the lucky one to go in and talk to the children and staff and be part of that filming. And a bit like being inspired when I visited Calm Manor, I was equally inspired by going into those 3 schools in Derby. And it was really heartwarming just to see and to feel and to know that it was making a difference. And we'll move on to talking about knowing it was making a difference and the impact. And ultimately, we're only just over a year into this journey in terms of coaching circles. It's really clear, and I could feel that when I was in those schools to see the difference it was making. But we really wanted to capture from a staff and pupil perspective around the impact, what difference they're seeing, but also what they enjoy about it. And that word fun, Phil, came up a lot, both from staff and children, actually. And I think it is something we forget about the importance of, and shouldn't see that as being fluffy or not equally as important as other elements of your school experience.
And I think listeners out there, if they're thinking about, embedding elements of coaching circles or thinking about coaching circles, they'll be thinking, I know they go, so what's the impact? Which I think is almost a perfect segue to go.
Let's have a listen.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I look back at year 7, when I was in year 7, and I think about how scary the sixth formers were to me at the time, that now knowing that they aren't that scared because they know that they've probably got 4 sixth formers in their coaching circle. I'll be just walking around the site and the year 7, I'll just hear, "Hi, Lily," and I'm like, "Huh?" And all of a sudden there's a year 7 behind me and I'm just waving because I don't want to seem rude that I didn't shout hi back, but my hand's going. And I think that's nice because ordinarily you just wouldn't expect them to have the confidence.
My role in school is not teaching, I'm admin. So for us, some of us haven't been in a classroom, but we did it. 13 out of 15 back in September said they did not want to be with me. They wanted to be with their form tutor. I asked that same question last week, and I said to them, we've done this now for some time. I want a show of hands. Where are we now? 13 hands went up to say they love the coaching. And today, hand on heart, I would say I love it.
It's really changed how I've thought about something, or I've been able to make that connection with somebody.
I really enjoy coaching because I got put in a coaching group with somebody that I already knew, and it made me feel comfortable to speak out with them. But then I got to learn and know other people in the group as well.
We're really early on in our journey. We've been doing it for almost a year now, and it's been great. We can already see impact.
I think they feel that they belong. That's the biggest thing for me. The year threes, when they came up, they absolutely loved it. You know, and I think one of the questions at the beginning of term was, what's your favourite part of the school day? And they said circles. And I think they didn't feel so intimidated by the year sixes. They felt that they got somebody they could go to, somebody that they would look out for them. I think it's the best thing we've ever done. I personally really enjoy it because, well, just because I enjoy it, but the benefits are massive. You know, all these children that you see smiling and happy and getting to know, I enjoy getting to know the children. I think there's nothing negative. All of the things that you worry about, like the logistics, they just work themselves out.
If someone is new to the school and they get put in a super circle group, everyone has to introduce themselves. So everyone in your circle, and you get a chance to make new friends.
I haven't got any data to show it's working. I can just feel it's working. How they seem to really sort of care for each other, all the different year groups. I'd like to think we had that before, but I feel like it's even more at the moment. I think we have been brave, because when you think that we're taking 3 times a week out of our timetable, it sounds a lot. When you think, staff are still trying to fit the rest of the curriculum in, and we're asking them to then come away from that. I think you do have to be really brave and go for it. And already we've only been doing it for half a year, and already I can see the benefits, and I just know that they'll continue and get better.
The kind of buzz around school when it's been kind of circle time and seeing the children coming up to me, the children that I would have never seen before through reception and 1-2 has been really lovely to see. And I think even now when we go into our staff meetings and we know it's a circle staff meeting, kind of that shock's not there anymore. Actually, as a staff team, we're actually quite excited to go and kind of get into our staff circles as well. Has been really nice.
Wow.
I know, isn't it
Great,
always lovely to hear about that impact? And again, some colleagues there sharing that they don't necessarily have the data yet. It's still very early on in their journey, but they absolutely feel and see the difference that it's making in terms of children's belonging, connections, feeling cared for, confidence, and staff and children, I think, put that across really beautifully.
Yeah, and I think as we carry on with this journey, I think we'll see the benefits of that in terms of the curriculum, because youngsters will be more settled in other classes in the curriculum, and so therefore they won't have to teach things 3 or 4 times. They'll get it first time, and then I think as well that as it matures, I think we'll be able to use the coaching circles for delivery of curriculum as well. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that develops.
And some schools were starting to explore that already with their PSHE curriculum, weren't they, and utilising that time.
And I think you go back to the charter, which we're obviously passionate about. First one's belonging. All of those clips, our young people and staff are saying that the belonging is enhanced, that there is that genuine community feel.
And if coaching circles, in the words of that young person, make that child feel cared for and safe at school, then of course that's going to help them to feel a sense of belonging. It's going to then support them with their attendance, and that's then when it escalates and helps them to continue to then grow and thrive through their school journey. So absolutely it fits so well with the work that we're doing collectively across the city.
And I think, it's a bit of an emotional watch, isn't it? How could you not listen to that? Some wonderful young people and wonderful staff there. But Graham and Joe, you must be super proud to think that X amount of months ago, this was just a
vision, a thought that would be good to do.
After such a short period of time, that is already, evidence and, it's concreted with
Yeah.
regards to the impact it's having in schools and on young people.
And worth adding that we've got 3 full films about this. So if people want to watch the full films about each school's perspective, take a look at the website, which is on inclusionpartnership.co.uk to listen and learn a bit from those schools. I think what was a really proud moment was last week was we did a training day for new schools in Derby that wanted to come and learn about coaching circles. And those 3 schools and other schools that have been embedding and embracing this work shared their own perspectives. So it was very much about a Derby perspective at that point. And I think that's a proud moment for Carr Manor as well, to see the ripple effect of that work and that training that has started to spread across the city. So I think we continue to grow from here and we start to support new schools. The existing schools that have really embraced it and are continuing with their journey will provide some peer-to-peer support across schools. I think this is an early stage in the journey for us, but definitely a very exciting one.
Absolutely. Yeah, and certainly I think the new schools that were at the training, the second lot of training, they were really inspired and heartened by Derby stories, because it is all very well going to Leeds and it's an early start and a long trek, and we don't want to have to do that, bless Carr Manor, but we want to create our own hubs of practice in the city.
Open the doors and come and see us.
Absolutely.
Well, it's like the video we shared at the conference, isn't it? It's not the first person, it's the person after, it's the person following that helps that movement and that change. And having, you're right, seeing Derby schools and having Derby schools there to talk about, we've already done this, gives you that.
But to have a school sharing that video just then saying, I think it's the best thing that we've ever done, that's gold dust, isn't it? And yes, there's logistics to think through, but again, that same colleague shared about that can get sorted and you can overcome that, and that planning can help make sure that you've thought everything through. And the experience we've got now in the city means that we can share that and we can learn from each other. But that phrase, be brave, is one that we use time and time again, but really came across, I think, through this piece of work that schools, there was elements of anxiety around this is very different to how we've approached things before, but they made that brave step and they all very much put across that it's the best thing they've done and it's working.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say we've got 3 excellent videos there from the schools that we went into, but there are a couple of other schools who've been on the training and done that, and they've taken a slightly different approach in terms of taking a longer time to plan.
Yeah.
And they're going to start in September. So it's horses for courses.
Yeah, and we look forward to hearing more about how that progresses, and we'll be in those schools filming and capturing that when we can do as well.
And if we've got listeners out there that want to, show a bit more interest in coaching circles or think about how they could embed it, where do they go to? Who do they seek?
Yeah, take a look at the videos. For Derby City Schools, it's the virtual school that fund the training opportunities that Carr Manor have delivered for us. I think we're just, like I say, starting to think about our own expertise that we're building in the city as an opportunity to share those expertise. I think we're going to collate some of the resources and the planning materials that we'll share with schools in Derby. But yeah, please get in touch if it's something you want to explore, and we'll signpost and help as much as we can.
Yeah.
Okay, so another fascinating podcast, a topic that I think we're all passionate about and we can see is really working in the city. But let's finish off with a checkout question and get that wheel spinning again. So who's going to go, Graham or Phil?
I'll go.
Graham. Got to be Graham.
Guest privilege.
Ooh. Question 11. So the question is, what's a tradition at your school that you cherish?
I think a tradition that we are developing, I'll talk about the virtual school.
Yeah.
I think it would be Creative Thursdays, in terms of getting youngsters together to do creative activities. And although we're not a bricks and mortar school, we bring youngsters and significant adults together with creative artists, and we create that sense of community, those relationships, building on skills. And that is probably one of the highlights of my week.
Nice. And that word community.
Community, relationships, relationship building, yeah.
Phil, any thoughts or ideas around that one?
It's a difficult one just because of the word tradition. I think from a personal point of view, and it comes back to that idea of not having any forgotten children, it's when you've got really great and finely attuned recognition and reward systems that are linked to school values, and you see all that knitted together, and you have that genuine sense that young people are recognised for meeting school expectations, for doing the right things on a regular basis. And I will say, and I know it's probably going to sound a little bit corny, that from being in a school where coaching circles were embedded as an early tradition, I think that has got the potential to be a fantastic tradition.
Yeah. Nicely pulled together there. I'm liking that one. And then just one of the final questions. Again, I think if you can think of this one through as a virtual school head, Graham, but if your school had a motto for inclusion, what would it be?
I think it builds upon what the inclusion toolkit. It would be thriving through relationships, because I think if you've got good relationships, people do thrive.
Absolutely.
Both adult to adult and adult to a young person.
That's
young
a great
person
motto.
to a young person, yeah.
Great, thank you so much. I hope everyone's found that a really interesting episode. Like I say, it's something that we're really passionate about and we're seeing the difference. So please do get in touch if it's something you want to explore with us. But really enjoyed revisiting those film clips and sharing those and talking about the journey that we've been on. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Graham. And I think most of Derby City
you
would also
initiated
say
this work.
a big thank you to you as well for everything you've done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. It's really heartening to see the practice being worked out and implemented in schools and making an impact, which is fantastic.
What it's all about. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this episode of Because School Means More, brought to you by the Inclusion Partnership. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights, ideas and inspiration to help make schools more inclusive for everyone. Real change happens when we work together. So, if you're inspired by what you heard today, we'd love for you to be part of the inclusion movement. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this episode with colleagues and connect with the Inclusion Partnership. Thanks for listening.
Because school means more.